Testing. Can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you fine.
Hooray! We figured it out. I just should not be here when Craig starts.
All right, an auspicious start to episode 1.
It
Frankly, at
is.
this point, I'm tempted to just leave it in. Add some
Sure.
character. Heck. But, you know what? Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's skip the generic opening. And you know what? Let's just say, hey, Joel, how you doing? After
I'm
all the tech
doing
trouble.
I'm doing well. I'm glad we figured it out. I was having a little bit nervous. Like, is it me? Is my Discord finally is this the Discord curse drama coming to us at last? And no, it just
Ay,
like I
ay,
said,
ay.
so I've been doing good. It's been raining here, so I've just been inside most of the day. Tomorrow's gonna be nicer, so get to out then. That'll be nice for me.
Supposed to rain here, but, it looks like we kind of missed it.
Nice.
So, Joel and ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between and outside,
Mhm.
welcome to Warhammer and Weebs, episode 1.
Woo! Episode 1. We're not even the 0 pilot anymore. We're now episode 1. Woohoo!
Yes, sirree. It's been an auspicious start, but you know what? Every podcast has its problems.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
shaking off the rust, we're trying things out, and now that we've finally gotten everything down, we can get down to brass tacks and talk about the bloody brass world of 40K.
Ah, yeah. Space orcs and guys in suits and elves and eldritch horrors. Let's go.
So, episode 0, as you mentioned, our pilot, we talked about the differences between the various franchises that GW has, the various Warhammers as it is,
Mhm.
and our main focus, of course, is going to be 40K because it is to me one of the most interesting, and to GW, it is its primary moneymaker.
Brings in the big bucks. Brings in the green.
Oh yeah, like Age of Sigmar has some material about, so occasionally you get a little bit of fantasy, but oh yeah, all the money press is just going nonstop for 40K. You got games, you got books, you got, of course, the miniatures, you got the paints. It's wild. So, but the thing I'm concerned about is the lore, because 40K is dense and fascinating and dark and funny and just once you really get into it, it's hard to get out of it.
He once said that the 40K lore makes the Star Wars expanded universe look like it makes sense.
Yes, because Star Wars is
6
for
movies and
all
then
Star Wars.
everything else. 6 movies and
Yeah, because Star Wars in many ways, um, excluding the Republic era, is in a way basically revolving around the Skywalker saga. Like all 9 movies and everything associated with those 9 movies has to
Right.
do with the Skywalkers.
Pretty much. In some way, shape, or form. In some way.
Yeah. And even though you have different planets and the like, you really have like 10 planets you go
Yes.
to, 5 of which are the same. You got Coruscant, you got your Tatooine, you have your knockoff Tatooine, which is Jakku, you've got Hoth, you've got Dagobah, and
Naboo.
that's yeah,
Kentucky.
Naboo. And that's pretty much like you got other little planets, but if it's not a war zone, it it's pretty much just the same thing. And so High Republic kind of gets a little bit more to it, but even then, it's largely just like comes down to you have the Jedi, you got the Sith, you've got a Republic, and it's kind of all in the background because all we really care about are the 2 people with the lightsabers.
That's so true. If you got a lightsaber, if you don't got a lightsaber, you ain't that important. But I bet you
If
40K is
you're
like even crazier. It's just it's
oh yeah, 40K is just The thing about 40K that you have to remember, and the thing that we're going to really delve into, is that the main characters, I say main characters, but the people we largely focus on, the Imperium of Man. The Imperium is huge. Like, Star Wars Galaxy, we're told that there are like hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of species, and we kind of see it in the Senate. With the Imperium, it's just man. But it's man across a million worlds. And you
Damn.
have like the Eldar, you have the orcs, but then you have to really consider the fact that like there were other species and we kind of just wiped them out. And that's on top of the fact that you have, yeah, you got the orcs, you got the space elves, but you also have just like the eldritch horrors that occasionally pop out of the side dimension. And each of these planets is having its story. Whereas Star Wars is like, all right, if the Jedi basically aren't coming to this planet, we really don't care. It's every other planet has this story.
Oh wow. Dang.
And so, yeah, we might be following space marines, but like even major battles with egregious loss of life is just a drop in the bucket. You'll find as we talk about this, there's just a gross amount of humanity.
Too many humans. Too many.
We're talking trillions. We're talking trillions upon trillions upon trillions upon trillions. Uncountable numbers. When we talk about the Guard, it will be difficult to wrap your head around.
This just sounds. The Empire of Man sounds like what the Empire in Star Wars wished it was. Especially if you believe in the whole humanocentric thing they want to do. Like, damn, that sounds like a lot of humans.
Yeah, we
Oh.
talked about it in like episode 0. Like Palpatine would be like he would be like a stepping stone, maybe, to the Emperor. He would be the Empire, quote unquote, that he makes is just you compare it to the Imperium, and it is a sheer embarrassment.
Oh, it's gonna be fun.
He's already an embarrassment to the other Sith empires. You think he's like a footnote in whatever the Imperium is? No. And so,
Yeah.
with that in mind, let's actually start talking about that. Because in order to talk about 40K, we gotta kind of talk about the broad strokes of history. In order to talk about the broad strokes of history, we have to talk about the broad strokes of history of the Imperium of Man. There are other history. The Eldar and the Necrons technically are first, but they're their own episode or episodes. It's kind of complicated. But again, the Imperium of the Man are the main characters, so to speak. And in order to talk about the point when man is at its lowest, we have to talk about it when they're at their highest, which is the golden age of technology. Or, as it becomes later on, the dark age of technology, this golden age of humanity at this moment, though. This is about 20K at this point. We haven't gotten to the 40K part. And this is pretty much the stepping stone for what the Imperium will become later on. For context, all the technology of the Imperium is just a pale imitation of what came before.
Interesting. I'm actually surprised humanity actually lasts to 20K. Given our current state of affairs, I'm surprised we last this long. Uh,
Yeah, no, it shockingly enough, we made it. We made it to the stars. We made it beyond. We were to understand the golden age of technology. You have to understand that humans think about us on Earth and how we look at different environments and different territories and should be completely inhospitable to us, whether it's blistering cold, scorching heat, barren desert, and somehow because we are human, we look at it and we're like, yeah, I can survive that.
good. Build the Hollywood here in this desert where there's earthquakes and fires every day.
Humans are tenacious. We are a very tenacious species, something that you'll see all throughout 40K. But especially in 20K, when we are at our economic technological peak, we we had colonialism down to a fine science.
If there's one thing we know how to do, it's colonize. So I assume by this point, humanity, though, as a species, has sort of gotten over its differences. Like, is there still internal racism, like white people and not white people, or
If there is, it's never really talked about. Like most of the dark age of technology isn't really spoken about or understood because it's pretty much the cultural aspects of it are more or less lost. There are some little bits that kind of continue on to the day, and you see it kind of twisted in how their descendants kind of have done things, or people from these different regions have done things. And so I guess you could argue, like, we'll talk about it, especially when we see the guard. Like, you look at the Kriegsmen, the Krieg, and it's just like, or even like, I'm trying to like the Valhallans, and it's just like that's just a Russian soldier. That's just a German World War I soldier in space.
Mhm.
And like we don't it's not like they're ever like, oh yeah, this is German, but like you see their armor and you see their uniforms and you're like, yeah, no, that's just a Russian. He's got the cat
Right.
and everything.
Interesting. So it's not like other sci-fi futures where like humanity has sort of decided, you know what, there's no difference between a European and someone from Asia and Africa. It's just we're all human. We're, so I guess
We
that's kind of my
had
question. Or we gotten kind of
yeah,
past those the internal divisions of humanity now, and kind of like now we can all focus on the other with the enemy outside of space.
if we did, there's a good chance we probably did because we did manage to get to that point. Again, they're not the a lot of the information we have from that is kind of like sparse. It's very much like they focus a lot on the technology,
Hmm.
and but there is a general understanding that we don't really have. It's not really the Imperium as it would come to be later, where it's like you very much have this central figure and the central authority that
Right.
everyone across the Milky Way reports to.
Hmm.
It seems a little bit more loose. Like vaguely, people are connected to Earth. There's very much. What ended up happening was there's various little groups and countries, as it were, just sort of did their thing, and it's like, all right, well, we're not. There's no point really fighting. If we're gonna fight, we're probably gonna be like, all right, because theoretically there are bigger fish to fry, but even that's kind of like limited to an extent, and it comes down to the fact that we have these three major components that really eases the way for us throughout 20K. The first being the Men of Iron. And they have different names. There's like Men of Wood, I believe. There's Men of Stone. But Men of Iron are effectively androids, and they kind of just did everything for us.
This is what people who want AI to be, and what
Oh,
the
yeah.
Japanese are working on. What the
Only at the time it kind of worked because they were our security, they were our construction, they were our agriculture, they were our engineers, they were our technicians, they were pretty much everything you could do, have a man of iron do, a man of iron would do. And it was coupled with this other major piece of technology known as an STC or a standard template construct. And it was kind of effectively WikiHow and Wikipedia on a technological level, just put into a machine and just drop down wherever. And this is basically how we went ahead and did colonization so quickly, because you could have a colony. You could send down men of iron if you had to. You could send down people, but mostly you probably just sent down men of iron, and you'd send down an STC. And this standard template construct was basically a WikiHow for everything. You needed to build a a habitat. Okay, cool. These are the materials you need. This is the size of the walls you need. This is how you smelt the materials together. This is the kind of screw you need. You don't have screws? Okay, this is how you develop these screws. This is how you set things up. This is the angle you do things at. It was quite literally just blueprints for everything you would need to create a functioning colony and or city and or town or whatever you needed. And this was just commonplace.
Civilization in a box, sounds like.
It quite literally was. You ever seen Kim Possible? And there's that one episode of, I'm forgetting their species, but they're blue aliens, and they come in, and she just drops a box down, and it builds a lab for Draken.
Oh, it was a green alien, but yes, I remember them,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's pretty much that, a little slower, but like just that. Some actually could do that. There weren't really limits on the wonders of the technology of the golden age technology. Almost everything it could have it or program it to do, it could do. We were just that good.
Dang, this is always so fascinating about this is, I think what Warhammer already is showing is what me is the difference between, like, this and maybe also Star Wars. Although this is where it's weirdly Warhammer and Star Trek are actually a little bit closer, is this idea of, like, technology really coming through for us, and us just making this wild stuff, like, "Here's civilization in a box, people. Here are the robots that are gonna do everything for us." Like, I always find that funny and fascinating in terms of, like, these worlds and, like, the tech very much is important to the development of how these societies are built.
Oh, absolutely. And it comes down to our third piece of technology that really determined everything, and that was the discovery of the warp. Because
Of course.
we were really good at building stuff. We couldn't beat physics, though, yet.
Yet.
So we weren't really going faster than light, exactly. There wasn't exactly a jump drive, you know?
Mm. Right. So you
And
discover hyperspace.
space is big. Space is
Dang.
very, very big. And, they had advanced ships, but it's the difference between, like, the moon taking a week or two to go to the moon versus taking maybe a day and a half. It's still time.
Mhm.
And the moon is the closest body. You're now trying to go to Mars. You're now trying to go to several planets away. Like, do you think about the Milky Way galaxy? Think about just how many planets are across it. That takes time.
Yeah.
And for a long time, the humanity was just like, all right, well, cryo sleep? Sure. That's just what we're gonna do.
The
And
Avatar approach. For anybody who's a fan of
that's
Avatar, the Blue Cat movie.
yeah. Like, we went ahead and like it was just pretty much just like cryo sleep. We'll get there in a couple centuries or so. Sure. It wasn't ideal, but we managed. And then we discovered the warp. And so the warp was basically a sub-dimension where it was both a reflection and yet not of reality. The immaterium, as it would be called. If we're in the materium, it's reality. The immaterium is the warp. Things are topsy-turvy, very much like reality is a suggestion, not a rule.
Gotcha.
And so, but you could, if you're trying to go to point D from point A, in reality, you have to go past B and C. But in the warp, there's a good chance you could leave A and hit D before you hit B and C.
Dang.
But if you're not careful, you might end up at Z.
So it sounds like the warp is like a more dangerous version of hyperspace, but crazier.
Pretty much. They lost a lot of ships. It was a very like experimental sort of like, all right, we don't really know how to navigate this until they did, because they found that certain humans had a mutation, a literal third eye, which allowed them to navigate.
Ooh,
And
cool.
these people were put in ships, and they were like, okay, I can look through there and see how to figure out the ease of this weird warpy storm reality, whatever we're going through. I can kind of see how we get to point B from here. I can see how to get to point C from here in a way that everyone around me can't. So these navigators suddenly made travel far easier, and you very much could suddenly go from A to D the way you wanted to. There were some incidents, but travel pretty much smoothed itself out. And suddenly it was like the sky's the limit. We've got the technology, we have the workforce, we have the ability to travel. Our neighbors are pretty cordial, mostly because we have an incredibly powerful autonomous army. You know,
That
the
helps.
elves still stick their noses up at us, but at least they're not going to spit at our feet. At least not in front of us. Um, those orcs over there are kind of a problem, but they're not the problem they would become later on, because we have ships that can burn them from orbit. We have an entire armies on countless amounts of bodies that will just charge through them, feeling nothing. So instead of becoming a continent ending apocalypse, it's a little bit like seeing a tiny spot of mold in your shower and then spraying it with 409.
Oh gosh. Yikes.
Now down the line, it's straight up black mold, but it's just a little, all you need is a little bit of elbow grease. Everything's pretty manageable. We're riding pretty high. And then around 25k or so, 23, 24k hits. And then Terminator happens.
Oh dear. The robots turn on us. It always happens.
Yep. We don't really know why. Um, there's some theories. We don't really know. It could be just like they gained full on intelligence and they're like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. They want a full on Geth from Mass Effect. Hey, why am I serving you if I am a sentient being and you're not paying me? It could be something with the warp, because sometimes the warp is it just causes problems. As you'll see, it causes so many problems. Um, but whatever happened, we ended up with the cybernetic revolt. And 23rd millennium or so 2300. And things go bad.
Ooh.
Because suddenly all that technology we have, from like fabricators to terraforming to actual sun eaters, because we have machines that can eat suns, to gray goo. Yeah, all of a sudden, all of that is being used against us.
Ooh. That isn't that the way. Always the technology turns on you.
Yeah. So there were just worlds that just got consumed. There were worlds that just got snuffed out, lost for all time. There are worlds who that just like were glassed, that were split apart,
Mhm.
that were just piles of corpses. And this just happened all throughout the galaxy. We don't have quite the same level of reach we do down the line and during the Imperium's era, but we have a lot. And there's a lot of people, a lot of planets, and that's a lot of deaths.
Yep. I'm assuming
And
Earth is also affected too by this?
oh yeah, everything is affected. We had these things all over the place.
Right.
Like it's so bad. Like we even were teaming up with aliens, because like these robots didn't discriminate.
Ooh, that's not
So like even the aliens were like, okay, no, we've got to step in. We got to do something because these humans' tech is going to kill us all.
damn. Well, we
So
love a good robot. Who doesn't love a good robot uprising? Isn't that the way?
yeah. So we don't really know what causes it. We don't really know what truly ends it. We just know at some point we managed to end the war. We managed to defeat them. And we just said never again. Nope, we're not doing this again. We're just out. Get rid of all AI.
The dream of today. The dream.
Yeah, it was just like no. Anything that if it has a single blip of thought and does not have a meat sack attached to it, get rid of it. And we did. And, it's not great. We're kind of in a pretty bad spot.
Yeah,
But, we're
how do
like,
you survive as a civilization because you've been reliant so long on the tech? How do you
we're still
that
human. We're tenacious. We've got, our brains. We got a real lots of intelligent people. We're like, okay, well, we will recover. We'll rebuild from this. We didn't get snuffed out. We didn't get turned into living batteries, Matrix style. Let's just take a breath and figure this out. We'll rebuild. We'll do something. Okay, and then the sky opened up.
Oh, that's never good.
Yep. Because while the humans were having trouble, the elves, the Eldar, they also were having a lot of trouble because they. One thing about the warp, and we will have to do an episode about the warp at some point, and we'll have to talk about this a little bit more when we get to the Eldar and their aspect warriors. The thing about the warp is it reflects reality. And specifically, it tends to reflect mental and emotional states, especially mass mental and emotional states. And these emotional aspects, they tend to take a life of their own, which can be a problem. So the
Ooh.
Eldar's solution was, all right, we'll have specific aspects, aka aspect warriors, on which we will direct these certain emotions to these specific gods, you could call them, and they will be positive for us. We will have the specific, things that won't reflect on the warp, and this won't cause a problem. They forgot about one big problem: ecstasy, excess, general ego. The three E's of elves that would end up causing a problem and birthing a god that they could not control, which was Slanesh, the prince of pleasure, the warp god of excess.
Ooh, I see them now. They got the devil looking thing. They look like something that just came out of Fortnite. Ah, uh,
It's very he, she, they. It's very X-rated because, whoo boy, there's some Slanesh video pictures you cannot show on YouTube. Um,
mm,
but Slash went ahead and rewarded the Eldar for her creation by pretty much stealing most of their souls en masse. It's a whole thing. And while they're dealing with that, the birth, I guess you could call it, of Slanesh tears a hole in reality. A gaping hole from the warp that starts leaking into the world. And this hole would later become known as the Eye of Terror, a direct path into the warp.
oh, damn.
And not only does this cause so many problems in reality, it creates innumerable warp storms, which makes navigation through the warp pretty much impossible. It also means a lot of communication being utilized through the warp is no longer possible. Things are getting jumbled. There's a lot of screaming, but things are getting jumbled. You can't really communicate reliably anymore. You can't travel anymore. You can maybe do little short bursts from planets if you're neighbors, but there's no more long range travel. Meaning suddenly you have a humanity and lots of human civilizations that find themselves isolated.
Ooh, that's not good.
Like,
Are
imagine,
are these civilizations in communication with each other? It's like they're all sort of one big super state, or this is kinda like,
well, they weren't
"Hey."
really a super state. Some of them were pretty much their own thing. Some of them were in communication with each other. Like I said, there wasn't really a big head honcho on Earth at this point. It was pretty much a far more laissez-faire sort of a deal, you know? Occasionally, you
Uh,
probably got like some rich person doing a colony here, private people going to colony there. Okay, we've got these resources. This place is getting overcrowded. Let's go here. Natural ways that colonization tends to work, just with more
Gotcha.
tech.
But there wasn't any, like, man-on-man planet fighting, or there was, and just, like, it was just probably local.
Uh, There probably local, so to speak, but like there probably was most definitely that like, we're humans. But if there was, we didn't really talk about it, and it got a lot worse
Mm,
because imagine Coruscant,
yeah.
and you had a fair bit of Coruscants. Now imagine the fact that remember Coruscant has no greenery or place to grow things or
Right.
even a fully functioning atmospheric system. Okay. Now imagine hyperspace travel no longer works.
Oh, no, yeah. Actually, that had happened once in Star Wars, so yeah.
And you had many a planet where this was the case.
Oh,
Because
no.
suddenly the food's not coming in, the
Well,
water's not coming in, you can't go anywhere, you can't talk to anyone outside your planet, and that's already bad enough. But again, there's a hole in reality, and it's leaking, meaning the stuff in that immaterium is coming into the materium. So not only is your tech not working, your travel not working, your planet is possibly just like not suited or equipped for agriculture or even clean water without specialized machines that, hey, probably are going to have trouble and are having a lot of trouble because the people, the machines that maintained it, tried to kill you and you had to kill them. And now no one's running this.
God.
On a bad day, your planet might just start raining blood or mucus
Ugh.
or acid. Maybe there's just a disease coming through and all your water has suddenly turned into Ebola or something. Um, Suddenly, someone might be having a party and then remember the dancing fevers of like the 1300s or 1400s?
Yeah.
Yeah, imagine that happens planet wide.
Oh, gosh.
Let's see what else. Oh yeah. By the way, Johnny just has powers now. It was kind of a thing once in a while. Someone just had a little, so maybe he could shoot a little fireball. Except now, he snapped his fingers, and half the village is in flames.
Oh, poor little Johnny. Oh, little Johnny. Dang it.
And little
This is
Billy
chaos.
has been having bad dreams. And one day little Billy's mother opened the door, and there's a demon there now because he let a demon in, and there's just his body just became a vessel by which the warp is coming through, and there's demons all over the village now.
It really is just a roll of the dice of how much chaos can a plant suffer on a day.
Not to mention, there's just people who are growing third arms and growing scales, maybe growing a tail. Who knows? There's people who are just utterly being twisted and torn about. There's people who are just like, again, they might. Although, I am sorry about
Yep.
that.
Nope, there you are. We are back,
I am
folks.
so sorry about that, everyone. Once again, Discord is being our asses. Um, but yeah, no, yeah, there's a problem because yeah, not only is Susie's baby just exploding people's heads, um, you are just someone over there is shooting lightning now.
Oh
Someone over there
god.
can move mountains. Someone over there is just Bane.
It sounds like the most twisted version of like how the mutants come to be from X-Men or like when people get superpowers, but like there's no Superman or Wonder Woman's. It's just everyone's just going to heck in a handbasket getting powers and causing chaos.
It's like if the Brotherhood managed that one plot from, I believe it was X Men, the first X Men, where it was like, just turn everyone to a mutant,
Yeah.
where they kind of managed that. Not everyone turns to a mutant, but a lot of them do. But also, being a mutant also means you have an innate connection to hell
Oh
mentally.
Jesus. Oh, that's not fun.
So, witch hunts became very big for a reason, and it
Even in
continued
space,
to this
history
day.
repeats. Oh
Oh
gosh.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. You have a lot of people who are just like, yeah, hey, last time we let someone who could do this go unchecked, you know, demons came in, and also half the village just vanished into a sinkhole that's still on fire. So yeah, the next time, I don't care if that's a kid, the next time this happens, it's going on the stake.
Burn little Susie.
Pretty much. This happened a lot.
Burn the witch. Burn the witch. Burn the witch.
Quite literally, it is very much a a statement to this day in the modern Imperium, where it is suffer not the witch, the mutant, the Xeno, the heretic, or some variation of that phrase.
Oh gosh.
People don't like psychers, which is what these people are known as. They don't like psychers. They don't like mutants because, whew, as we're gonna come, no, we are very like baseline human. When we talk about the ab humans, it's just gonna be. It's pretty much abhumans are pretty much the modern X-Men, and they are treated just as well, if not worse.
Oh gosh. Yeah, this is why the Magneto would be right. People are gonna have a field day with the abhumans.
Oh boy, Chaos loves these people because they're good. Hey, it's a good source of followers. When you treat it like trash, you tend to join the one that kind of likes you, even if it ends up, turning you into an even bigger monster, because at least someone appreciates you.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Oy. The See, this is for She-Ra fans. I should probably even got more She-Ra stuff. The humanity of man, like every time when people want to write the first one, that's the most xenophobic people ever. But like worse.
Pretty much. And there's also the third part, if you heard that there, the Xeno.
Yeah.
Because we went from being somewhat cordial, tolerant neighbors to, oh my god, that is just enemies everywhere. Because remember, we don't have our army anymore.
Right. We kinda gotta make an army from scratch.
And the Eldar know how to get around without the warp. The orcs pretty much just slap rockets onto meteors, and that's their way of getting around. It works for them. And we're largely stuck on planet. And we're having all these trouble. We have, in many ways, sometimes barely functioning Dark Age technology tech. And so you have a lot of alien species that went from cordial neighbors and or maybe allies, or we could beat them down to, oh my god, everyone jump them, they're vulnerable. Slavery
Dang.
got really popular.
Oh, no, with the for human slaves? Hu
Oh yes, not just amongst humans, just like we were a source of labor and entertainment for a lot of alien species.
Oh, no, that's not gonna go down well long term. We hold
Oh
grudges.
no. Oh yeah. the Great Crusade, there's a reason why there's only like four other main alien species. By the time we get to modern Imperium, there were more. There were a lot more species in the galaxy.
Oh
We
no.
came back through the Great Crusade and we did not forget what happened during the Age of Strife because this was 5,000 years of torment and we just went ham.
Oh god. Like we don't forget, we're gonna wipe all the floor with everybody.
Which,
Which is
yeah, that's just 5,000 years of just like this Age of Strife is just 5,000 years of just awful, awful stuff that's happening. And Earth
that's
is
I mean
not exempt.
ooh no. And that's probably like the capital of everything.
It's the birthplace of humanity. It is the cradle of mankind. It is holy Terra down the line. Earth is. I hesitate to say we regress because it's not necessarily like we were blasted back to the Stone Age. It's more like it kind of depends on where you are on Earth, and it's just kind of the same for a lot of other planets, but especially Earth. Because yeah, there were some places where it got very Mad Maxian.
You know what's funny? Um, this is actually fascinating because like Warhammer is depicting something very real in terms of like societal collapse. Where you know how everyone always thinks the old saying of like World War III can be fought with nukes and World War IV can be fought with sticks and stones.
Oh yeah.
Uh, so I actually don't believe in that completely. I mean, that's probably gonna be lots of death and destruction. Um, but the weird thing would be we wouldn't regress to the point where, like, we would, like, not know how to speak language, and we would still kind of know things, like, we probably wouldn't have cell phone, but we kind of those of us who are still alive would probably know what a cell phone is. So, we would definitely lose some skills, but we would not, like, go to, like, cave paintings and me go, "Ook, ak, me, World War IV with stick." Um, it would definitely be kind of that weird I mean, definitely probably some Mad Maxing stuff. It's like other places, you're probably right, like, some semblance of civilization and like, we probably still have guns and stuff like that. Um, when we'd have to restart society up again, like, we'd probably lose some skills, but we wouldn't forget either. It's very interesting.
Supposedly, a lot of projectile weaponry kind of like became rare during the Age of Strife on Terra and other places. You kind of see this carried down the line because we have obviously 40k has projectile weaponry, but then you also have like giant super soldiers with like chainsaw swords,
That sounds but
and like a lot of that heck again. A lot of this tech is coming from the dark age of technology and the age of strife. Like you had people in on Terra known as techno barbarians because yeah, they're not necessarily having parliament, but that dude still has a set of power armor.
right, that makes sense.
It's very Fallout in some respects in many of these places because it's like you play Fallout 4 and you see just like Boston in ruins, and there's mutated roaches everywhere, and feral
Ugh.
ghouls, and just like everything's trash. But then, like, you have a bunch of people in power armor, or you have someone with a laser Gatling, or you have somebody in like with you know army level chainsaw. But then you might have the farmer next door, and he's got a gun made of like a block of wood and rusted pipes.
No, that makes absolute sense, yeah.
That's pretty much kind of the state of the galaxy. This was kind of just happening all over the galaxy, and it's just doing this for like 5,000 years or so until we get to around 30k. And that's when he arrives.
He
man who, well, the being, I guess, would probably be the more accurate term,
Hmm.
who would be known as the Emperor of Mankind.
The Emperor.
And we'll
Oh,
talk a little bit more about him during the Emperor episode, which I believe is the next episode, because he's fascinating. Especially given there's so little we actually kind of know about him. So much of it is coming from other people's perspectives.
oh, interesting. So
But
he's kind of a mysterious person.
yeah, he's one. It's kind of like you have that entity where you can never really write a book from his mindset because while he is arguably human, his mind is so alien that it's hard to kind of comprehend.
Fascinating.
But you have this emperor, and he's we do. I say no. What we do kind of know slash suspect is that he'd been around for a long time. He didn't just pop up. He was, if not one of these first humans, probably more than likely the most the first psyker, and the most powerful human psyker. And so he is just in pottering around in the shadows for 20, 25, 30,000 years, kind of just guiding humanity quietly. Sometimes he's been like, the person power behind the throne. Sometimes he's been a leader. Sometimes he's just been a guy somewhere or a girl somewhere or just doing something, just moving little dominoes, moving little chess pieces.
This reminds
So
me of something from Doctor Who almost. It's kind of funny. I can explain that when I explain Doctor Who one day. Why I think.
yes, your episode is coming up soon. So
Oh yeah.
I think,
Got
yeah, your episode's not too far away. So it's gonna be interesting. The Joel-isode.
Yes, the Jewel Sword.
But he's just sort of been doing things in the background, and it's not until the 25K and the Age of Strife that he's like, okay, I need to do something because
It
they're not
it
going to get out of this alone.
it remind you know what? I mean, I guess I'll say this. It reminds me both kind of this odd mix of Sauron from Lord of the Rings and a little bit of Valkorion from Star Wars, and also a little bit of some of the fanfic I read about Horde Prime that wants to go into deep into his character. We're just kind of this overarching character who just sort of always is in the background and to taken on many they have taken on many forms, especially with Sauron, who's like, you got the Sauron in the armor, and then you got the Anatar who's helping the elves make the rings, and you got the other Sauron who's like the advisor to the king of Arnor. Although I guess the Emperor is a lot less devil incarnate in this story.
Uh, we'll discuss his dubious morality at some point.
Gotcha.
Because, okay, I will tell you this: the Emperor loves humanity, but it's he
It sounds like
loves.
evil Doctor Who a little bit, but not in the way in that sense.
You're not wrong. He loves humanity, but it's like it's the idea of humanity. He can be incredibly callous to the individual if he thinks
Gotcha.
it'll serve the greater good.
Gotcha. That kind so there's a bit of a Sauron nature to him then. Although I don't think Sauron loves humans though.
And he doesn't
But again,
really love humans. He doesn't really love anyone
but true.
except that one guy.
Yeah. Uh, but yeah,
But
I guess
yeah, no, he's there.
interesting. So
Uh,
he
oh, what were you
doesn't
saying?
do it. So it takes him a while though to finally step up after humanity's getting its butt handed to it.
Yeah, he spends a long time in. He's got a lab just in the Himalayas, and it takes him a while because it's not just, again, you're not just dealing with a catastrophic loss of technology. You're dealing with demons. You're dealing with literal eldritch horrors just poking out now. And just how do you set humanity and prepare someone for that?
That's true.
And the Emperor's decision to do that was pretend it doesn't exist. Again, we'll talk about it more when we talk about the Emperor and his methodology and how he hoped to deal with the Chaos Gods and religion and all that. But what we do know so far is that he starts, and what's most relevant to this episode is he starts development with biologically enhanced warriors. The first being the Custodes. And again, all of these guys will get their own episode, but Custodes, the firstborn, they're pretty much humans they're pretty much the most human you can get on a biological level. These are people these are like young like kids pretty much altered on an anatomical level to be more.
I'm looking at them right now, the golden armor and whatnot. They're like mega knights.
Yeah, they are effectively the pinnacle of you can get before, like, because everyone else is more or less like surgically enhanced with like different organs and stuff. Custodes are pretty much the pinnacle you can get with taking a human and keeping that human as human, but also more. They're like 9 feet tall. They're like near unparalleled enhanced reflexes and senses. It is, if you know how Captain America is kind of like supposed to be the pinnacle you can get to humanity,
Right.
human perfection. It's kind of just that.
Interesting. They're like a mega. They're like an army of Captain Americas, but without the
But
Steve Rogers.
better. They're even stronger. Like, they're, again, they are above and beyond. Steve Rogers could not handle one of them.
Oh gosh.
But the problem is these guys are also super expensive to make and difficult to make. It's the equivalent of like you are fine. It is you are handcrafting a weapon with this like it's the equivalent of like going to the mine yourself with your pickaxe and personally hollowing out each ingot of iron and steel, doing the smelting and the alchemy needed to create the ultimate metal, then forging that hour by hour, every tiny little second, forge the perfect sword. Absolute masterwork. That takes time, that takes money, and that takes effort. And when you're trying to unite the planet, you need an actual army, and the Custodes are good, but when you want to move to the galaxy proper, you can't make enough of them. It
Uh,
takes too much resources.
they feel they kind of have to be like an elite force. 'Cause, like I can only make like 5 of you guys at a time.
He made
Over
10,000,
1,000. Okay.
which is a lot, but also not enough for the galaxy. They were his bodyguards. Um, yeah, they're bodyguards to the guy who's in a chair now. We'll talk about that in a moment. Um, so you've got the perfect spear. What you need is just bodies, and that's where the Thunder Warriors come in.
Mm.
They're pretty much just brutes. They are more or less just as the Custodes and the Emperor are like taking over territory slowly. They are taking on people and recruits who are joining this cause. Sometimes not willingly, and these are usually human men,
Mhm.
and they are genetically enhanced. They're given different organs and different little genetic enhancements and different little things that make them basically just incredibly strong, incredibly big, incredibly durable.
Mhm.
Like these guys are actually bigger than Space Marines. At
Oh
one point,
dang.
they're also technically stronger.
Mhm.
They're also incredibly unstable.
Ooh.
They were not meant to last long. and they're not really the smartest. Most of the people who led these Thunder Warriors were effectively the smartest and of the bunch, as it were. It's
Like,
not
they look
like later
golden.
on.
They got the gold armor too. I'm looking at pictures, so
It's more
it's
of a
gonna get.
bronze, I think.
Yeah, I gotta look one
But
picture. Got like their helmet look like a Darth Vader looking thing.
I mean, you should notice, like, you notice also the armor as well. Just like you'll see, like the echoes of what will become the Space Marine armor.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of this stuff is just echoes of echoes of echoes that slowly get refined. But again, all this stuff is pretty much just like
You know,
because old age technology that just gets refined.
it's. We were talking about like how the Emperor's like slowly conquering stuff, and it's like I think I'm starting to finally understand for the audience who has no idea what I'm going to talk about, what my version of King Nero is finally like. It's like, yeah, this is kind of what I pictured, like chaos for thousands of years until finally someone's like, I'm going to do something about it, and he does.
Pretty much. Like, that's pretty much just what happened to them. And so these guys, they are pretty much just bodies. They're very much um they slowly are going mad though.
Mhm,
They're not there's a lot of organ failure.
mhm.
They're not again, they're not the smartest. They're not really the best like Astartes, Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines that will come later on. You have pretty much these are pretty much sculpted. So you're not just big people in armor. Space Marines are sculpted soldiers. They are pretty much geniuses with college level degrees. They are officers. They are just. It is the most soldier on a both tactical strategy, command wise, just that you can fit into a person. You're not just
Dang.
muscle. You are mind.
Talk about the few, the proud, the Marines.
Unless there's someone writing, or unless you are a space marine without a name, or unless there is someone writing for another faction that has to show how badass they are, there's no such thing as a stupid space marine.
Damn. Oh, so when you say they're crafted, I mean like literally crafted, like someone puts a vat and is like, we're gonna just let it grow for X amount of years, and then I'm gonna chug some muscle into you.
Space
Or is
marines
it
or dude,
kind of everybody to some extent? Like, is the Emperor like just genetically
custodians
experiment?
are far more, I guess, crafted. You could say. Again, Thunder Warriors are kind of just like, all right, well, we'll just. It's a little bit like it's it again with the Captain America um comparison, it's pretty much you're pretty much doing dudes in like vats for a little bit and shoving more organs in them, and they come out bigger and stronger.
Okay,
It's a lot less finesse to it, which means again they're kind of falling apart because they're not meant to be the primary infantry. They're just a means to an end to make
gotcha.
things go faster. Because the primary infantry, the Space Marines, they're in the works of being crafted.
And when you say
But you
crafted, do you mean you put them in vats too? Like,
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about them when we talk about the biology of Space Marines.
okay,
But it effectively, the Emperor knew he needed vanguards and generals because he had projects he was working on, and he was also on a time crunch
right.
because he knows about the Chaos Gods. The Chaos Gods know about him. They don't like each other. They literally call them anathema. He is their opposite in every way, and him attempting to not only take control of humanity, but enforce what he calls the imperial truth. You know, the ideas of not religion or but like secular knowledge and technology and rationale and logic over everything else, which is his ideal version of humanity.
Some would argue that's a religion all of its own. That's a
Could
possible.
argue that
Yeah.
there were arguments about that. We'll talk about them at some point when we talk about the emperor.
Right.
But his idea was like, we could starve out the Chaos Gods. But he's working on different projects. He's a very powerful being. He can't be everywhere at once. Again, space is big. And he needs vanguards, he needs generals, he needs effectively aspects of himself to be leading forces out to reunite these lost colonies and planets of humanity and to further expand their reach. And his idea for that was 20 beings, or 21, depending, what were known as the Primarchs. And these were hyper engineered, almost like they were effectively his kids. Not that he necessarily saw them as such, which is complicated. We'll have to talk about it with each Primarch, because the Emperor played favorites.
As one does.
And he wasn't, even to the favorites, he wasn't exactly Father of the Year.
Sounds like somebody else in my story,
And so for the Emperor, it was his version, I will have these generals, and they will lead forth my armies. And in order to ensure those armies are loyal and function well and work well with these, vanguards of yours, he takes these Primarchs' DNA and develops what is known as gene seed. And these are sets of organs that are connected, that are, genetically connected to the Primarchs. And these organs are then implanted into young boys, preteen boys. And not only are they allow a more natural, I say natural, but because you're literally shoving a second heart and a third lung into this kid. Not only does it allow for more natural growth and, less organ failure down the line, like the Thunder Warriors, it also means that they're connected to their Primarch. So, not mentally, but something about when a Primarch comes around their kids, it triggers something in his sons. It gets them to fight faster. It gets them to fight harder. Their reaction time is better. There's something about just the Primarch leading his legion that allows that legion to just move as one far better.
Fascinating.
Like an unstoppable force. And this would prove very fruitful. It does get delayed a bit because of, there's a lady, Erdo, again, we'll talk about her in the next episode, and also the Chaos Gods, and they kind of catch wind of this, and they're like, okay, look, no, absolutely not. It also doesn't help that he might have gotten a loan from them, because he can't just draw some blood out of his veins and just make kids like that. He's not built like that. So it took a fair bit of finagling. And not only did he need an expert geneticist, he might have needed the Chaos God's help, and he might have promised his kids to them, and he might have gotten a loan of some warp juice or something, and he might have then proceeded to default on that loan.
Ooh, that's not good. That's gotta pay your debts.
Yep. So they stole his kids.
Not the kids.
And they punted them Clark Kent style across the galaxy, and these kids just sort of land on different planets, and they grow in different environments, and they adapt. That's why you see the Primarchs, and they all look radically different.
Yeah, I'm looking at a picture now. Like, you got oopsies. Ah. You got like one that looks like Doctor Doom. You got another one that's red. Got a lot of bald guys.
Yeah,
Got
there's
one
a
with
lot of bald guys.
what was the got one that looks like dead, who's dead and with plugs in his hair.
Ooh, yeah, that's Angron. Ooh, boy, poor Angron. His story might be the saddest. I kind of can't wait to talk about him because it's not great. But no, he goes ahead and he's like, okay, I've got to hurry up now because I am on a time limit. So, Unification War happens. He takes control of Earth. The Thunder Warriors meet an inglorious end because they're not needed anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts moving out into space. He takes over the Luna. He takes over Mars, and particularly what he really needs from them, which is the Admech, the what is it? The Mechanicus, the cult Mechanicus, because they're very good at tech. They're also just a little bit crazy. Yeah. They might have worshipped a space dragon at some point. And we'll talk about it later. But with this, these abilities in hand and these assets in hand, it allows him to very much expand his forces very, very quickly and just blaze through the galaxy with these legions. And as he does so, he finds his kids again.
Hooray!
Some are happy to see him, some aren't. And it very much depends on which Primarch is which. But they all kind of get reunited with their legions, and they're more or less just burning a path through the galaxy. Like, for context, again, it took about 5,000 years for humanity during the age of technology to get, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of colonies, which is not an insignificant number. But then you have the Imperium, and they've got what is largely rounded to 1,000,000 worlds.
Oh, dang.
And a large chunk of that was found during the Great Crusade. And the Great Crusade was only 200 years and some change.
Dang. That when
They are
humanity...
moving quick.
So, wait, so... back up a little bit. So, the Emperor's already founding the official Imperium and kind of getting all humanity back under one roof?
He is. Like, the Great Crusade is pretty much that whole process.
It's
He's
basically
taking over Earth.
Mhm.
Yeah, he's like, okay, and he'll pop onto a planet and be like, hey. Or he doesn't always pop onto a planet. A lot of times the legions do. And they're like, hey, hear the word. This is the Emperor of Mankind. You no longer have to live in squalor or fear or peacefully as you are already doing, because now you're part of the Imperium. Some accepted this. A lot of people didn't. A lot of those people who didn't were forced to, usually by gunpoint.
It's unification by force.
Oh, yeah. Again, legions moved quick. There were a lot of legions that just had to, because, it's 5,000 years. A lot of these planets have their own cultures now. Cultures, traditions, they've moved on. And then, they're told, hey, this guy in golden armor is now your king and master and lord. Obey him and start paying tithes to him. And they're like, of course not, we're not gonna do that. And then the 8-foot tall people in power armor come and shoot you with bullets the size of Coke cans.
Damn.
So yeah, you kind of change your mind after that. So you're moving quickly. Things are going pretty well, and as what we will come to find is a common phrase in Warhammer, things got worse.
Of course.
Because things aren't perfect during the Great Crusade, but it's not terrible. Again, there's a time limit going on, but they're making good time. Problem is, his kids are human. Granted, they're like 12 feet tall and have multiple organs, but they are human. They have their own personalities. A lot of these guys didn't necessarily want to join Dad. A lot of these guys don't necessarily respect Dad. And a lot of these guys have inferiority complexes.
Ooh.
And there's a series of issues that means one day, after far too many embarrassments and far too many abuses, they managed to rebel elements, some rebel Primarchs, managed to corrupt and seduce the War Master, effectively one of the favorites of the Emperor. Again, this is the guy he basically handed the war effort to and was like, sure, take over. They corrupt him and they're like, hey, wanna go wild?
Oh no.
And he did. And this kickstarts the Horus Heresy.
Ooh.
And yeah,
Betrayal.
this is only about, it's less than a decade and some change. Not necessarily a long war, but it is devastating.
Right, this is the war that killed all the other aliens, right? And why there
No, no,
aren't
no, that's
that
during the Great Crusade. This is the
okay.
Civil War.
Oh.
Because
That's
you have a lot of planets. You have suddenly you're fighting brother against brother, cousin against cousin. You have legions who, might have had a bit of bad blood with their cousins. Maybe you had brothers who might have had a little bit of a bad blood with their brothers. Now you're literally killing each other. Now you have, and it's not just space marines, you have millions, if not trillions, of humans. Because the Imperial army is huge at this point. You have planets that see this guy and are like, okay, well, I wasn't exactly happy when this tyrant took over. He's got a point. Let's rebel. So you've got civil war igniting at random planets. You have planets being blown up. You have entire fleets turning against each other. You have brothers murdering each other on the battlefield. You have, oh yeah, by the way, the Chaos Gods are involved because when I say corruption, he was literally corrupted by the Chaos Gods. Because they
it's
finally got over their squabbling to be like, you're our champion now.
it really is Rome with the legions and civil war and the emperor's army splits after one bad blood feud.
The funny thing is that Space Rome is pretty much a thing, but it kind of sat out most of the war.
Oh
Not by
really? I
its
didn't
own.
know. Is it
I
a human
mentioned Gilliman
empire?
to you before, right?
Right, right. Yeah, yeah.
He's pretty much Space Caesar. He's pretty much Space Rome.
Oh, okay. And is that a human faction though? I'm always a little confused.
Uh, well, technically it's called Ultramar.
Okay.
It is part of the Imperium, but it's considered like almost an empire within an empire because it's supposed to have
Dang.
like 500 worlds or so. Gilliman did like Gilliman was he's really good at what he does. We'll talk about it during this episode, but he is Space Rome. Rome built roads, Gilliman built space roads and
Gotcha.
travel and taxes.
Ugh. Truly
He was
evil.
very good at it. But
Excellent.
yeah, no, you've got so now you've got the chaos gods involved. So now you have demons, and this is a problem because the emperor pretty much didn't tell most of his kids these guys exist.
Whoops.
So now you have a bunch of his kids who are suddenly fighting demons that can drive you mad, and some that look like literal Satan, and some that look like they belong on Pornhub, and just like it's like, all right, well, it's bad enough that I'm having to fight my cousins and nephews, but also half my men just went crazy because the flying snake monster looked them in the eye, and their brains are melting out of their ears now.
Yeah, that doesn't help.
And there's warp storms again. So now they're localized warp storms, which means several forces have trouble getting anywhere. And meanwhile, Horus is just blazing a path to Terra.
Dang it. It was all going so well for the Emperor until all of it went to shit.
Yeah. And he's in a rock and a hard place because there's this little thing known as the Astronomicon.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty much a GPS lighthouse,
Hilarious.
but it's powered by psychic power. In this case, him. And this is vital because the further you get from Terra, the
Mhm.
harder it is to navigate. So what makes it very easy, well, easier to navigate the warp is when there's quite literally a giant golden beam of light that anyone who's a navigator or a psyker can sense. If you know where that is, you can pretty much orient yourself around the galaxy.
Oh, interesting. Man, the Emperor really
So,
kind of create a system where he can't really die.
to be fair, he had a plan. It's part of the reason he was on Earth and not in during the Crusade, because like he had a plan to rid the dependency on the warp. Kind of got messed up by one of his kids. Yeah, that turned into a whole thing, which didn't make things better. But yeah, he's kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place because in order for the fleets to more or less navigate, someone kind of has to sit on the throne. It's
Mm.
usually him, and it's not until Horus basically gets to Earth that he manages to get a temporary replacement that his best buddy Malkador, and it basically kills Malkador. But spoiler alert, it's enough for him to go and meet his kid in orbit, and it's pretty much father versus son.
Ooh,
And in
that's never.
theory, he should have been able to just crush the guy.
But what happened? What-
So Horus, yeah, he's got four gods running through him,
Right.
operating him, controlling him, giving him power, giving him precognition, giving him strength, giving him just so much presence. It's taking a toll on him, physically, mentally, and quite literally his soul is shredding to the point where like there's a part of him deep down inside that pretty much begs for his dad to kill him.
Sad, but that makes sense. What happens when you're controlled by demons? You're gonna lose
Yeah.
yourself.
So Emperor wins, sort of. Um, but you know, being controlled by four gods, more or less, it's still 4v1. Well, it's pretty much 4v1. Horus is kind of just he's a factor, but he's not as much a factor. Um, at that point, it's pretty much 4v1, and he does win. He kills Horus, but he gets hit, and it's a bad hit, and he can't really heal from it. He's also too powerful to die, really.
Ooh.
So they kind of end up having to convert his golden throne slash astronomicon into a life support unit.
Oh. So the Emperor's pretty much now homebound.
Yeah, he's kind of just been rotting there. You see a lot of images of him pretty much being a skeleton,
Hmm.
and it's kind of just like,
Oh yeah, I see one now.
yeah, he's kind of just, he's not quite alive. He's not quite alive, but he's also, again, he's kind of just too powerful to die.
Damn.
And he's just been sitting there for like 10,000 years.
Yeah, no one tried to resurrect him or
I mean,
rejuvenate his body.
they can to an like they're even trying. Obviously, the custodians have been doing stuff, but also it's like at the same time, the guy passively radiates psychic power to the point where even his bodyguards can't really stay in the same room with him for too long because it starts blackening their armor, which is the best armor in the Imperium, pretty much.
This is like a worse fate than what happened to Palpatine, where he gets stuck on like a harness that kind of keeps him alive. Like at least he has skin. This guy doesn't even have skin. He's got like
And
robot.
he's quite literally a living demon core.
Damn.
And
Like
before he can kind of control that, because, kind of suck it all in, he can't do that right now.
so basically the Empire is being run by a corpse.
It's not even really being run by him. Because now we get to this stagnation of the Imperium. And the range between 30k and 40k, which there's a lot of stuff that's happening. There's a lot of different ages that are happening during this point, but it's pretty much 10,000 years of just slow stagnation
Mm-hmm.
because the very thing that he doesn't want to happen happens. He becomes an icon. He becomes a god in the minds of the people.
Makes sense.
So instead of the imperial truth, you now have the state-sponsored imperial cult.
Oh no, religion. You didn't want
Oh
that.
yes. Oh yes. And religion has power, which again we'll talk about in the Emperor episode, because
Mhm.
you got trillions of people believing this guy is a god, and then you remember the warp exists. And there's a question on what's gonna happen to this guy. But again, that'll be the next episode. But then also the Primarchs are disappearing. These kids are just leaving, disappearing slowly.
Dying, or they just like, well, I'm out of here. Goodbye.
Some are just sort of just disappearing. Like there was a whole point during right after the end of the heresy known as the Scouring, and a couple kind of just disappeared in that. Well, one came back, the lion. Another one we still don't really know what happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
Not presumed. All the Primarchs that are dead, we pretty much know are dead. So the ones that aren't, if there's no body, you kind of just presume they're alive. We just don't really know where they are. Some disappeared right after the heresy, during the war, during great fights. Some just up and vanished. Some were chasing either enemies or whatever, or just up and vanished. We don't really know. At least one of them, which we'll talk about in a moment, Gilliman, he got struck by a poison blade because one of his traitor brothers straight up became a demon Primarch. And now he's got 4 arms, a snake body, and some of the deadliest poison in the universe. And that's enough to even take down a Primarch. So he pretty much copies his dad,
Mm-hmm.
and spends pretty much the better part of 10,000 years stuck in a chair because they put him in stasis. They're like, oh, okay, if he leaves stasis, he's gonna die. We don't have a cure for this.
Damn.
So, but before he manages to do that, he temporarily takes over as regent, and he restructures a lot of aspects of the Imperium. Most importantly, being the Adeptus Astartes. Because before they were all in legions, and these were legions were like hundreds of thousands of space marines. And he's like, no, we can't do that again. Like, you cannot have that ever again, because this is a problem. So
Yeah.
he has all of them split into chapters of about 1,000 marines each, and that's why you have like list. If you look at like the list of chapters
Mm-hmm.
of Space Marine chapters, that's why like the list is so egregiously long, because they are just, again, you had this Ultramarines alone, Gilliman's legions were like close to 200, or like close to almost 250,000 Marines at one point by the end of the heresy.
Mm-hmm.
And then you split that into 1,000 chapters each. That's 200 something chapters right there.
Jeez. So many
Yeah,
chapters.
and then there's just been more created since. So you just have hundreds of Space Marine chapters.
So this is just to make sure that no one commander ever has a large enough legion to cause trouble.
Yeah, he does that. He splits the army and navy, because before they were kind of just their same thing together, and they're like, no, you guys have to be 2 separate institutions.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's pretty much very logical changes, and it's enough to stave off the worst of the Imperium just outright collapsing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a very shoddy. You have the Emperor built very shoddy. There were some elements that were really sturdy pillars when he's first building the Imperium, but others were very, very shoddy because
Makes
they were
sense.
meant to be temporary.
Right.
And his intention was, when we have time, I will fix all this. He did not have time. And
That
then
makes
Gilliman comes, and he has to build upon, he has to build shoddy, structures and reinforcements on top of already shoddy structures and reinforcements. And he's like, I will fix this when I have time. He did not have time.
Isn't it always the way? No one ever has time for reforms.
Yeah. So you have an Imperium that's pretty much, and they're still dealing with the demons, mind you.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
there's just an entire 10,000 years of just unsolicited oppression and repression and just like utter, just like you're redacting information. You have an entire inquisition that gets set up because, well, someone has to hunt down the heretic, someone has to hunt down the witch, someone has to hunt down the Xeno, someone has to do all this stuff. So
Mhm.
now you have an entire institution run on suspicion, on
Mhm.
fanaticism,
Mhm.
on just general greed because we're humans,
Of course.
backstabbing, power struggles, and it's just 10,000 years of this.
Ooh,
And they're just barely holding on.
10,000 years is a long time for an empire that big.
It's kind of a miracle. It's a major miracle they got to the point, honestly, because it's just it's bad.
And there's only
Um,
one emperor, there's not, like, a successor?
well, there's the High Lords of Terra, which is pretty much because Gilliman was the regent for a
Right.
while, and then he got taken down. He was out of commission for a while, and then there were the High Lords of Terra, and they're humans with human lifespans. So it's kind of like Congress, where
Gotcha.
you got policies, you got decisions, and that just sort of changes every couple hundred years or so because
Mhm.
you these people are living to 100, 200 years maybe on a good day, and again, our struggles, again, just suspicion, just personal greed, all of this just utterly wrecking things and just barely holding together. And that's
Ooh,
before you count the Xenos, because they're still around.
of course.
Yeah, so you got Eldar, you've got the Dark Eldar, the Drukhari, who are an even bigger problem. You have the Orcs, which are always a problem. You've got, occasionally, a planet just turns green because, hey, turns out that was a tomb world, and there's a bunch of immortal, skeletal robots with souls in them just rising up.
Of
Or, like,
course.
they don't have souls. Sorry, they're soulless, but they're not happy to be there. They're not happy you're there. They really
Ye
want you gone. They don't like you. So they're a problem. You have the Tau, which they're not the most harmless. They're kind of the Tau are kind of funny because they're a much newer species, and it's kind of like a Star Warsian slash Mass Effect species in the wrong genre.
Oh, interesting. I find
So
that funny.
you have that they are very funny because you have, granted, they're very optimistic. Well, not optimistic. They they are trying to be a civilized galactic power in a galaxy that is neither civilized or logical.
They sound like the Vulcans, honestly, more than the you think 'cause that's the case, you know?
I think they're not like they're not they have different cast. Again, they all have their own episode because we have to talk about the caste system, we have to talk about the Tau, but like compared to They're very economical. Okay, so you have the Imperium, which
Mhm.
is like suffer for your sin of birth, and your life belongs to the Emperor of mankind, and the best thing you can do is effectively suffer, and possibly the only thing you can do is die for him, because your life belongs to him, and your reward will be eternal glory beside him on his throne. And so, if that means you must eat corpse starch and mutated rats at the bottom of a hive city, rejoice, for your life is like, he is the emperor's to live with, and this is what he has decreed you must do, and rejoice, for that is his decision, etc., etc., etc. And then you have Tao, who are like, yeah, we have free healthcare.
They're like the Canada of the galaxy.
They are quite literally the Canada, in that they are both arguably the nicest and arguably some of the scariest and most vicious if you put their backs against the wall.
Yeah, I know some Canadian friends, so you don't mess with them.
And then you've got the what is arguably the biggest threat currently, which is pretty much are they bigger than the orcs? Yeah, I'd argue they're a bigger threat than the orcs. And you have the Tyranids, and they're pretty much space cockroaches,
Ew.
but like adaptable space cockroaches,
Oh no, that's even worse.
led by
Ew.
a hive mind.
Oh no, a hive mind. It's a horde prime situation. Ugh.
And it's like, do I have the image? Um, we don't really know. What we know is they pretty much came from outside the galaxy, and there are innumerable. There are practically innumerable amounts of them, and they adapt terrifyingly well. They're pretty
Ugh.
much a lot like the bugs from what do you call it? From Starship Troopers, but worse, because Starship Troopers, you can pretty much kill a tier the bugs with enough guns and firepower and people, lots and lots of bodies. But the Tyranids, not only are they reproducing at such a rapid rate, they do so because they consume biomass, meaning every being you throw at them that dies, they just eat it. And then they get stronger. And then they add that to their energy resources. And that allows them to produce more Tyranids. And they don't just eat people, they're eating plants, they're eating bacteria, they're eating
Ugh.
practically every living thing they can consume on a planet. They are turning it to slush, they are sucking it up into their ships, and they are using it as just energy resources that to keep moving forward to get to the next planet and do it all over again.
I'm now understanding why no one will ever pick why they want to live in the Warhammer universe. Like, it's all I'm now understanding that more and more. Because like every time everyone's like, "What sci-fi universe would you love to live in?" It's like it's always Star Trek, 'cause, that's utopia. But then it's like you can't pick Star Trek. It's like, yeah, then I like, all right, all I now will pick probably Star Wars because depending on the century, I might get a couple good years or the planet. Warhammer sounds like there's nowhere safe except maybe the Space Canada.
Oh no! Like, here's the thing: anyone who wants to live in Warhammer is pretty much trying to live out a power fantasy, while assuming they're going to be a space marine and forgetting just the sheer amount of like pain and effort and just everything it takes to be a space marine. And you're going off the assumption that you might be a space marine when the more likely than not, 99.9999999999999% of us are just going to be an underhive person somewhere, just eating our daily portion of corpse starch after a 20-hour shift in a factory. And that's
Yep.
assuming that, again, the orcs don't burn your hive to the ground, and the Tyranids aren't eating you alive.
Yep. I'd rather live in Star Wars, even during the dark times.
And to make matters worse, the Tyranids That's not even the main fleet.
Oh gosh.
What we have is effectively the equivalent of a scouting fleet, a tendril of a much larger fleet far off into the galaxy like beyond the galaxy proper. And what we've done are just the equivalent of like the thinnest part of a tendril. It's just a scouting force. And they are just absolutely tearing their way through planet after planet. And it used to be we could figure out kind of where they were coming from, but then they adapted because space is not two-dimensional. It's not just one direction on a map. It's three-dimensional. So they're coming from the up, and they're coming from the right, and they're coming from the bottom, and they're coming from the left.
Oh gosh.
Yep. And that was before we get to the Black Crusades. Because chaos is still a thing. Traitor legions are still a thing. They're still not happy.
No, it does not seem this galaxy wants to ever be stable. It's just one galaxy.
Oh no. They have. The other thing about the warp is, again, time is kind of a suggestion. It doesn't pass the same way. So you have literal veterans from the Horus Heresy that are still alive. And they remember their loss, and they hate it.
Ooh.
And one of these veterans, Abaddon, the Despoiler, he kept getting these scattered warbands because, with the Scouring and the loss of the Heresy, most of the traitors were pushed and fled through the galaxy until they ran to the Eye of Terror, because that was the only place the Imperium was not going to follow them.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been kind of getting these scattered warbands and just attacking the Imperium with these massive groups of traitor legions. And he's done this several times over 10,000 years in what is known as Black Crusades. And eventually, and sometimes he would be driven off, but a lot of times he'd kind of just do a hit, and then run. Until he hit the 13th Black Crusade. And he, long story short, split the planet Cadia pretty much into pieces. And with Cadia, it went this stabilizing force, keeping the Eye of Terror from getting bigger. So instead of the, slightly expanding portal in the middle of space, the galaxy pretty much tore in two.
Dang. Like literally, they're like a big hole.
Like if you look at the map of the map of the Imperium in today, and you'll see that half of it is just
I see it. Yep.
Or in black. That is half of the Imperium that just got consumed by the warp. It's just an open hole into the warp now.
Jesus.
Yep.
I'm looking at the Warhammer map. It's like, wow.
Yep. It is. Yeah. Just half of them are just there now, which means all that stuff that happened in the Age of Strife with the raining blood and acid and all that, and just mutants and animals going crazy and bigger and everything going mad.
Yeah.
It's that all over again. Which was already still happening, because it was still happening occasionally throughout Warhammer. Now it just happened again, but to hundreds, if not thousands of planets on a larger scale. Because now they're in the warp proper.
Oh no. Yikes.
So, yeah. Things are looking pretty bad. But you can't have grim dark without the occasional glimmer of light. And that's when we finally get the return of Guilliman.
Huzzah!
And Guilliman, through some enterprising Mechanicum agents and some Eldar, he gets awakened and put in armor and is kind of sort of cured of his poison. It kind of goes away slightly, but he's weak for a while. But he's up and about, and he wakes up after 10,000 years, looks around, is like, "Oh dear God."
What the heck happened when I was asleep?
It was a situation that was already bad that went horribly worse,
Oh, no.
and he is just like, this is what it's just like the whiplash of having to wake up after 10,000 years and realize this is what my brothers fought and died for. This is what my sons fought and died for. And it is just this bloated carcass caricature of my father's dream of people literally with rolls of fat, sitting on gilded golden chairs, preaching about the glory of the emperor and declaring themselves his heralds, while people below them, who are skin and bones, they're just giving them gold and flaying themselves and preach and like throwing themselves down because this is what the emperor wants from them. And you're Gilliman, and you wake up, and that is what you see.
Someone probably not happy.
Oh, he's not happy. So he goes to Terra, and he goes to his dad, who pretty much is just a comatose patient skeleton on the throne. His dad does manage to talk to him, though. And he's pretty much like, hey, yeah, I screwed up. I'm sorry. Just, do me a favor. Just do something, please. And so Gillen's like, okay, fine, fine. He takes over the position of regent again, and he's like, all right, the entire galaxy's on fire. We need to start putting this out. And so I am calling a new crusade. That's, the Indomitus Crusade. This is Era Indomitus. And so, because, of course, everything about Gilliman has to be Roman.
Of course.
And so he pulls out his MacGuffin, which is new Space Marines, which he just had commissioned and waiting to be unleashed for 10,000 years.
As one
And
does.
these are known as the Primaris Marines. And these are kind of designed to shorten the path between Primarch and Space Marine. Because Primarchs are like 12 feet tall. 11, 12 feet tall. And Space Marines are big, but they're like 8 feet tall. Like, there's something obviously missing in between there. And so you've got these Primaris Marines. And they are bigger, they're stronger, they're faster than the OG Marines. And so these Marines, they get sent out to different, to booster the, ranks of the current Marines. And on top of that, the current Marines are given what is known as, these new types of gene seed. And it allows them to get that same treatment, become a Primaris Marine. And it's known as crossing the Rubicon. It's a very deadly treatment. It's a very deadly surgery. Not all of them will survive because, older you get, the harder it is to survive surgeries.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're a Space Marine, which is part of the reason they do this as a kid, because if there's any point where you're going to survive getting a second lung and having your rib cage fused together and having a third lung and getting a second heart and all that put into your body, you're probably going to survive it better at 17 than you are at 107.
That is true.
So, yeah, that's kind of. He pretty much just starts going around, putting out fires the best he can. We're still in the middle of Era Indomitus. The Indomitus Crusade is still ongoing, but I won't say it's stalled. Things happen. There was a point where he kind of had to fight his bro for a while. We'll talk about the Plague Wars. He had to break off and prevent Ball, the home of the Blood Angels from just getting eaten. He had to prevent his own home from just dying to cancer Ebola times 50 billion.
Oh gosh.
Urgle and his brother, we'll talk about them and the Chaos Gods. And, yeah, it hasn't stalled. It's still going, but you'll see it sometimes with the different cinematics. I think one of my favorite cinematics is just Gilliman watching a map and just watching planet after planet go red and just bending his head because it's just so overwhelming.
I mean, this empire is just barely being held together with duct tape and glue and dreams
Pretty much.
and
Just
guns.
lots of blood and bodies. And that's kind of where we are. We are arguably in the 42nd millennium at this point. So, yeah, that's kind of where the Imperium stands. We're on the constant cusp of disaster. Maybe we can pull it out. There is some hope. We got Gilliman. There is, the Lion. He's another Primarch. He's been stirring around. There's the hope that, like, maybe there's gonna be some more Primarchs stirring. Maybe there's gonna be some more, MacGuffins coming around. Who knows? But all we can do is just see where it goes.
If I were a
That's
human,
40K.
if I were a human, I'd be like, let's just end the experiment now, man. It's not worth it. It's not worth it.
That's what chaos is.
Exactly. Chaos is like, guys, is it really worth it? Is it?
Oh man, that's pretty much Nurgle in a nutshell.
The name's
Yeah.
Nurgle? That's hilarious.
His episode is going to be one of the most disgusting we'll have to talk about because heesh.
Oh god.
Nurgle is quite literally the god of disease
Ew.
and decay and despair.
Oh gosh.
The 3Ds, they're all awful.
Man, we're still going. Even though humanity probably shouldn't have kept going, but yet we're still here.
Somehow we persist for 42nd, give or take some change, millennium. We have persisted.
Is there anywhere safe in the Warhammer galaxy, or is it all crud? Is Terra even safe?
No, because it's been invaded a few times.
Ooh.
I want to say death, but if you're not careful, your soul might get consumed by the wrong thing, so no.
Oh god. Yep, it's official. The Warhammer Galaxy is not a place you ever want to go. Say you want to live
Oh,
in,
no.
unless you're a crazy person.
Oh, no. Yeah, no. It's quite literally the most brutal regime in human history. Wait till you talk about hives. Wait till we start talking about penal legions.
Oh, sweet mercy. Ugh. Humanity's like, let's just take all the bad regimes we've ever done in the history of our race and like merge them all together. There's, but we're not even Gilliman's good enough to reform, or like Gilliman's like the least worst leader. Gilliman's not like
I mean, he's good at what he does, but he's one guy. Like,
that's true.
he's both a product of his time, a product of his environment, and also just he's one guy. So like he is the logistics guy. Arguably speaking, if you want anyone in charge of the Imperium, it's him. But he's also dealing with 10,000 years of backlog. Like this is a regime where propaganda is treated as fact, where they redact facts, they've forgotten facts, they've straight up ignored facts, they've lost facts, they've lost information. Like, again, they don't have a document system exactly. A lot of this stuff is being written by hand because no abominable intelligence allowed. So, you're dealing with 10,000 years of text written by fallible people who might have been in a hurry, just wrote either the wrong thing or got the wrong information. and put it in as fact, and you don't forget that. No one's going back and really redacting this stuff. You
Dang.
just add it in another book. You might say, okay, Planet Z had 10,000 people yesterday, and it was, invaded by demons, and it survived, only to find out, 2 months later, because information is slow and also time is weird. Yeah, no, Planet Z didn't actually survive. It had, 4 million people, and it was invaded by demons, and we don't really know where half of it went.
I'm starting to realize that Warhammer is like just everything but aggro. Like every worst situation ever. But like, oh, we lost the whole planet. Oh nope, 20 million people died today. Oh,
And
now
that's
they're back.
assuming the
Oh no.
demons are at fault. Like, literally, there are cases where, like, someone has done the wrong info, and just like, yeah, planet, okay, yeah, no, we had the wrong info, and we didn't send, you didn't need this shipment, or we sent the wrong shipment to the wrong place, or hey, that shipment just got lost, because sometimes that happens. That shipment came 5 years earlier. That shipment came 20 years later. That shipment just never was seen again. And guess what? 20 billion people starved.
It happens. The genocide seems like it's just a Tuesday afternoon.
Oh, yeah. Killing
So,
people, again, cheapest
uh,
currency. Human life is the cheapest currency.
oh god. So I guess kind of to wrap up, I guess I'll ask this: if I wanted to learn more about the Imperium, what books would I read? 'Cause I'm a book person by nature, or comics. There are comics or video.
That is a hard question to answer. I would obviously start with Master of Mankind, because that is one of the biggest, most important sets of books you could start with regarding 30K and like what builds upon the Imperium. But
Hmm.
like, it's kind of difficult to say, oh, just read this, because the 95% of every book in what is known as the Black Library is about the Imperium. Different
Yeah,
eras, different Space Marine chapters, different groups, different times, but it's usually about the Imperium. And all of it is different aspects, different perspectives, different looks at it. You look at it from a Space Marine's perspective, you look at it from a Custodes perspective, you look at it from a noble's perspective, an officer's perspective, a soldier's perspective, or just a serf's perspective. And all these people have different perspectives and different ways they're looking at this Imperium and this just rotting regime.
it's like if Rome just refused to die.
Pretty much, although arguably not as well built. There's a reason why Ultramar is considered one of the best areas in the Imperium to be in. It is quite literally Space Realm.
Cool. I guess we'll.
It's
Or
not
if this book
great. It's still in the Imperium, but it could be worse. It could be a lot worse.
is good to know. Well, definitely we'll have to check out that series of books. I'm kind of curious. Like, what are the Warhammer books like? We should do an episode just on the book side of things.
It's like read the entire Horus Heresy at some point. Like there's Master of Mankind. There's I want to say Betrayer. First Heretic, of course. But yeah, no, that's just yeah, the Master Mankind, the entire Horus Heresy series, it just lays the groundwork for everything you can see that will just become a rotting corpse down the line. And you see these these moments where it's like it's almost very it's oh no, I say almost because it is. It's incredibly tragic because you see this hope that many of these people had. Again, they're coming off of 5,000 years of just chaos and strife. You have a lot of hope that there's going to be this golden future, but you also see the cracks in it. And they just get bigger and bigger, and so much rot grows into it until it all explodes. And at the end of everything, it's just all you can do is kind of like seal it with caulk, but the rot's still there. It keeps seeping out, and no one really knows how to fix it.
Ooh, I'm curious if the Imperial will ever just fall, like they give up. or just completely collapses on itself.
Mm, I don't think they ever will. But we'll see. They never will because on a real life version, it is the cash cow of GW. The Imperium will not die. This isn't this isn't fantasy. They will not get an end time, more than likely. And if they will, it won't be for another 60 or so years. Because they've got like 10 more Primarchs just collecting dust in the back room. At the very least, they gotta bring him out again.
That's true. I've heard rumors the Emperor might be coming back or something.
If he comes back, it will be a long time coming, and we don't really know what he will be. He's not gonna be the guy in the golden armor.
Ooh, be the
There's
skeleton.
something on that throne, and we don't really know what if something stands up, what it's gonna be.
Ooh, that's kind of creepy.
But yeah, that is the 40k history, the broad strokes of history, particularly that of the Imperium of Man, in a nutshell. That is, we made pretty good time, actually. I'm
happy
good to
with that.
say that it's been less than 3 hours, which is a more optimistic time frame than I was considering.
Same here, but yeah, that was great. Like I was like, yeah, you're right. This isn't the Galactic Empire. This is worse. This is worse, and it lasts longer.
Oh, yeah, the Galactic Empire is a cakewalk. I wish I could be in the Galactic Empire compared to 40k. I will take that a billion times before 40k.
I'll take Valkorian Sith Empire. That lasts 1,000 years.
Valkorian's Empire, Sith Empire was an actually functioning empire.
And the Galactic Empire as well. I think I could
Something.
survive it. I think I could survive it.
You'll
Gotta
probably
deal with
survive it.
You got not
You'll
gotta deal
probably
with
be
annoying.
human.
Just gotta deal with annoying stormtroopers. Like, eh, what's that different from any?
Just give them beer.
Yeah, make sure you have your passport and your papers.
Yeah. But yeah, that's 40k. That's episode 1. That is the first step into a long journey. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm nervous, but I'm ready. It's like, oh gosh, the Warhammer universe is just gonna be like, oh god. That's just gonna be what I'm gonna say all day. Oh god. Oh god. This is depressing. I love it.
Oh yeah. There's glimmers of hope, but oh god, is it going to be depressing? But yeah. Oh, ladies, gentlemen, everywhere in between and beyond. That was episode 1 of Warhammer and Weebs. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you have a good morning, good evening, and good night. And I hope you tune with us next time. I'm Kimara.
I'm Joel.
Thanks for listening.
Take care.